Welcome, everyone. My name is Priscilla Nesello. I am a business administration teacher at the Federal University of Pelotas in Brazil and a postdoctoral researcher. I'm also a member of City Living Lab at the University of Caxias do Sul and a WCI member. It's a pleasure to be with you. I will be the chairperson of the Breakout Session A, panel discussion enabling knowledge sharing and the use of artificial intelligence in knowledge ventures. The researchers in our panel will be Dr. Paulo David Soasti Bareta, Doutora Bárbara Isabel Mojarro-Duran, and Dr. Angel Eustorgio Rivera González. Each presentation will last 20 minutes in the order previously mentioned. I would invite the participants to write your comments or questions in the chat or use the reactions button on the meeting control bar to upload or select an emoji. At the end, we will have 20 minutes for questions before the end of the session. I don't know if Dr. Paulo David Soasti Bareta is with us now. Not yet?
Not yet.
Okay. So I think Doutora Mojarro-Duran could start our session. Okay.
Thank you so much for the introduction. So this paper that I'm going to start presenting, I'm going to present together with my colleague, Dr. Angel Rivera. Together, Angel and I, with Dr. Lucía Rodríguez, worked on this paper. It is entitled Enabling Knowledge Sharing Through Relational Capital in a Family Business Context. Can you move to the next slide, please? Thank you. So following the format for the presentation today, these are the sections that we will be including in our discussion and sharing of our paper with you in this panel. So to start, Angel, can you please go to the next one, please? Thank you. So to start, the main purpose of our paper was to consider relational capital and how it impacts knowledge sharing in the family business context. Why in a family business context? Well, because these types of firms play an important economic and social role in developing economies. And also, at least here in Mexico, they form at least on average the 80% of businesses in Mexico, which translates into a very powerful unit of analysis to consider when it comes to understanding the relationship between, how a relational capital forms inside of family firms and what particular variables are relevant to then enhance and promote a process of knowledge sharing that can be translated into a competitive advantage for the firm or the organization. Some important parts or points that we wanted to highlight in our paper, or that serve as a pillar to our research, have to do with what happens inside of the company in the types of relationships that are established between not only family members, but also between family and non-family members of the organization. Being a family-oriented company or a family-foreign company and having the family as part of the business or the operation of the business really contributes to forming richer relationships that enhance or form a social network that has the potential to really differentiate these types of firms from non-family businesses. If you continue to the next slide, please. So basically, our paper has three main contributions. The first one is that it focuses on relational data. It disentangles or breaks down the components of relational capital into 4 variables that we will be explaining in more detail in the next slides. And also, it contributes to the literature in family businesses because it analyzes the relationships between both family members and non-family members, which is not very common to analyze in these types of literature or find in other studies. And also it expands research on family business to Latin America. Traditionally, literature on both relational capital, knowledge sharing, and family firms has been focused on other contexts and other cultures. So we wanted to understand whether the same concepts also in the same types of relationships are performed or created in a similar way, considering, that Latin America context may be potentially culturally different as well. So now I transfer the voice to Angel.
Thank you, Bárbara. Thank you. Well, we are going to analyze some theoretical elements that are important in our paper. The first one is knowledge sharing and family business. As you know, people share knowledge in order to survive, and the process in this aspect, the process of socialization is very important, because through this process, through relationships of agents in this process, they exchange elements of value. Organizations then are social constructions in which people share the knowledge, and they acquire new knowledge, but also they share the knowledge they know in order to achieve collective objectives they have proposed in organizations. Well, the transmission of knowledge is a multi-level concept. It means that many researchers have studied this process in organizations, teams, people, and it implies the existence at least 2 agents. One of them is which possess the knowledge, and the other one is who acquires it. But this process, knowledge transfer or knowledge sharing process, has been studied it has been studied in many contexts, including family business. Some authors said that in family business context, the knowledge sharing process is more efficient because some of the characteristics of this context, for example, strong sense of identity, they have common language and high levels of involvement, for example. The second important topic in our paper is related to relational capital. Relational capital refers to the quality or value of relationships an agent maintains with other agents in their environment, and it has to do with the ability to interact with internal as well as external agents in the context. Relational capital in family business also it's an important topic. It has been studied a lot, and it has been said that relational capital that family business presents some advantage in the use and development of relational capital because some of the characteristics of family business, for example, they have more behavior of cooperation, collaboration, reciprocity, sense of identity, emotional involvement, private and unique language between others. Well, in this study, we decided to relate these 2 elements for knowledge sharing as dependent variable and relational capital as independent variable. To do this, we based our proposal in relational capital framework developed by Rivera and Carrillo, which states that the development and measurement of relational capital relies on certain combination of categories. we can mention agent category, context category, the object category, and relationship category. As you can see in this hypothesis that we proposed, we operationalize relational capital with two variables of agent category, which are mutual trust and reciprocal commitment. We operationalize context category with norms and sanctions, and we operationalize relationship with strength of ties. So our general hypothesis is that relational capital, in terms of these four variables, has a positive effect on knowledge sharing and family business. Then we disentangle this general hypothesis, and we define for each independent variable a hypothesis versus dependent variable. For example, a hypothesis H1A, the extent to which actor I share knowledge with actor J in family business is a positive function to the extent to which actor I trust actor J and vice versa. We do that with all the four independent variables, and we have then 5 hypotheses. This is our research model. This is our research model. We have then the general hypothesis between relational capital and knowledge sharing, and we disentangle this general hypothesis, and we have also 4 particular hypotheses between mutual trust, reciprocal commitment, norms and sanctions, strength of ties, and knowledge sharing. The first 4 are independent variable and the dependent variable knowledge sharing. As you can see, below each variable, we put the category. For example, mutual trust and reciprocal commitment is agent category, norms and sanctions, context category, strength of ties, relationship category. And we use 3 control variables: hierarchical level, gender, and age. To do this, the methodology that we use, it was a simple case study in a Mexican firm located in Monterrey, Mexico. The company was selected because 3 main reasons. The first one is because members of the family, they were involved in a day-to-day operations. The second one, it was because it case is atypical of other manufacturing in terms of manufacturing companies, in terms of size, type, family control, and operations. And the third, and I think one of the most important, is that we had full access to data and information in that company. Well, we use social network analysis. It means that we recollect and analyze relational data. Members were, it means that members were expected to develop relationships and at the same time share knowledge, to transfer knowledge. So we use this kind of analysis to get that data and analyze. We analyze DIAS. The unit of analysis, of course, it is the relationship between a pair of actors or agents, meaning that all variables were dyadic. We use, we design and apply a relational data survey. We use a technique called roster, in which we present to the all respondent a list of a select key actors and ask by using a 0-10 response scale if their perception of people's behavior or contextual conditions was null or exist. We use the software using it, and we use a multi-regression quadratic assignment procedure to prove our hypothesis. In terms of the sample, the average, the age average was 45.8 years with a range from 25 to 63. Regarding gender, the majority of the sample was men, 22 was men, and the other 5 were women. 7 had a managerial level, 13 had a technical level, and 7 were operatives. Well, this is the table that we use to operationalize our variables. And it's important to mention that, for example, the knowledge sharing that is dependent variable was measured following Borgatti and Cross recommendations, as well as previous studies. And the independent variables, mutual trust, reciprocal commitment, norms and sanctions, and strength of ties. Well, we use proxies of relational capital, and we use some contributions to other authors. You can see in the right side of the slide the items. How do we collect the items? What questions did we ask to participants? And well, in the case of knowledge sharing, we have two questions because we use the well, one of the matrix was we obtained the matrix asking does the person X share or is willing to share knowledge, but at the same time we ask the transposed of that matrix. In that case, we ask from 0 to 10, do you share or are willing to share knowledge? If you combine these two answers, you get a better results in terms of the variable that you want to measure. Well, analysis and results. To test hypothesis 1, we include the variables knowledge sharing and relational capital. And I mentioned before that we use gender, hierarchical level, and age as control variables. Relational capital was calculated using the average of all independent variables, of all the proxies that we use to operationalize relational capital, which are mutual trust, reciprocal commitment, norms and sanctions, and ties strength matrices. Model 2, the table you can see that Model 2 shows the best fit, explaining 33.6% of the variance. Thus, hypothesis 1 is supported. Then we run the MRQAP process in using it, and as you can see, well, we disentangle the variables, and as you can see, Model 7 presents the best fit, explaining 34.6% of the variance. All hypotheses are supported with the exception of H1B, which of course is a surprise for us, which is related with reciprocal commitment. The strong effect of knowledge sharing is from mutual trust, 0.239. This is our final results with the research model. The result supports our proposal in terms of having trust as a variable that operationalizes the dimension related to agent, norm and sanctions as a dimension of the context, and finally strength of ties as the variable of relationship. Well, I'm going to give the word to my colleague Bárbara. Thank you, Bárbara.
Thank you, Angel. Okay, so the next slide shows the sections of the paper that have to do with discussion and conclusion, but basically it summarizes the results and what we found in our research in these 4 points. First, regarding theoretical contributions, our paper or our study adds value in the sense that it tests relational capital, not just focusing on just one variable or one perception of relational capital, but it actually disentangles the concept into four components that are relevant to evaluate this measurement. We were surprised, like my colleague Angel was mentioning, that we didn't find support or statistical support for the effect of reciprocal commitment. Our theory, and this would be material for another paper, is that it probably has to do with the cultural definitions of the concept and how most likely collaborators in this company and in this culture see strength of ties a more relevant component of RC. Regarding methodological contributions, it's important to highlight that our study focuses on relational data in family firms, and it also includes, or as part of the sample, it includes family and non-family members and the relationship that they establish to be able to share knowledge. So this is an important point in our research because it's not just focusing on the individual perceptions of people, but it actually focuses on the process that they develop with their relationships. Also, reciprocity and symmetry are essential properties to understand exchanges between people. Our study is proof or shows evidence for this assertion. Moving on to practical contributions, the findings of our research provide evidence and support for organizations that are looking to find time and space to nourish trust. You know, how we can, as an organization, build trust between members, regardless of their family status or not. Also, establishing and developing norms and policies to create organizations and make them grow in a healthy way become very important and fundamental for the process of sharing, and also other processes in the organization that help it become more competitive and productive. And finally, the focus of how organizations should improve the relationships between family and non-family members proves to be a transcendental point in companies becoming more competitive and sharing knowledge, of course. So for the future research, we see that future paths that we can continue this research include exploring other industries. We are conscious that different industries, depending on their nature, could face different issues, which in turn could potentially define relationships in different ways. Probably in those instances, the relational capital also includes actors that are outside of their organizations that become even more important to nurture internal relationships as well. This is the end of our presentations. Thank you so much for listening.
Thank you, Doutora Bárbara, Dr. Angel, for the presentation. I apologize, Doutora Bárbara, because I didn't introduce you. I don't know if you like introduce yourself now.
Yes, no problem. Thank you so much, Priscilla. Well, my name is Bárbara Mojarro. I am a doctor in business administration from EGADE Business School in Tecnológico de Monterrey here in Mexico. I am currently department head for the Occidental region for the management department in the business school. And I have been with tech for almost 8 years. I have been working with Angel and Lucia in other types of research as well for some time now. And I'm very happy to be with sharing, what we have found in our research with you. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Doutora Bárbara. Doutora Aceves is a professor and researcher at Tecnológico de Monterrey in Guadalajara in the entrepreneurship of, sorry. I would like to present Dr. Angel. Sorry. Dr. Angel is a professor of management, quality systems, and research methodology at Instituto Politécnico Nacional, Mexico. Okay.
Yes.
He has been studying knowledge management practices as well as innovation process in organizations. He also has a special interest in using social network analysis to study the dynamics and collaboration process between significant agents in knowledge-based networks. He is a member of the Economic Development Network at Instituto Politécnico Nacional, and since 2014, he became a member of a national system of researchers in Mexico. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
So about the presentation, I perceive this showed how relational capital affects knowledge sharing in family business, okay, based on a theoretical framework with 4 elements, arguing that the transfer of knowledge object depends on other variables to be effective, like agent, context, and relationship variables. Okay. At the end, and the most important in my vision, the research presents some practical actions that could be implemented to improve the establishment of a qualified relationship among the company's agents. So, again, thank you very much. Just to summarize it, the presentation conducted for you.
Thank you, Priscilla.
Now I would like to invite Dr. Angel for his presentation.
Okay. Well, good morning, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here again with you. My name is Angel Eustorgio Rivera, and I work at Instituto Politécnico Nacional in Mexico. This morning, my colleague, Bárbara Mojarro, is going to present the paper with me. Our colleague, Lucía Alejandra, has an emergency, so and because of that, she's not here with us. So we apologize for that. The paper that we are presenting is entitled Enabling Knowledge Sharing Through Psychological Safety in Inter-Organizational Arrangements. And it was published in 2021 in the Journal of Knowledge Management. And well, this is the table of contents. We are going to discuss something about introduction, theoretical framework, methodology, analysis and results, discussion and conclusions. Well, for the introductions is nowadays the knowledge-based view of the firms has been it is important in social research and in organizational research, and the process that they propose in terms of to manage knowledge. Also are important. One of those processes is knowledge sharing process. To understand this knowledge sharing process, it's very important to understand what happens inside organizations and what happens with the relationships that people establish and how do they transfer elements of value through these relationships. But there is not, when we study this process, knowledge sharing process, you can see that there are a lot of variables that researchers have related with the process. And one of those variables that are very important, at least in Mexico, is psychological safety concept. Well, some authors have argued that when psychological safety exists in organizations, people feel free to take risk and to make decisions, to share knowledge. And so in this paper, we try to expand the understanding and how knowledge sharing in interorganizational level can happen through the existence of the presence of psychological safety. We try to integrate in this paper the knowledge-based view of the firm and psychological safety theory. Well, theoretical framework and hypothesis, we analyze again, like in the other paper, knowledge sharing. Well, as you know, knowledge has proved to be an important issue in organizational analysis. And the creation and use of knowledge in organizations, well, it's very important. When you analyze the literature in terms of organizational context, knowledge is represented by a set of articulation of experiences, abilities, beliefs, and intuitions. And authors like Davenport and Prusak argue that knowledge is created through human interactions, and it is used for taking action and in varied and uncertain situations. Well, knowledge sharing it has been considered a key of management process in organization. So it has been analyzed in many contexts, and it has been defined as the process through which organizational actors exchange, receive, are influenced and affected by the knowledge and experiences of others, And as you can imagine, this is not a simple phenomenon. On the contrary, this is a very very complex, because the interaction of people are all the variables that immerse in the process. Well, psychological safety has been related with organizational learning and with higher levels of performance. And we use these proxies to analyze this variable. We disentangle psychological safety in respect, tolerance, trust, and working environment. Psychological safety is commonly defined as the result of taking interpersonal risk and coming up with creative and varying ideas with no risk of judgment on the part of the other team members. So we try to prove in this paper that psychological safety affect in a positive way with knowledge sharing between people. Well, researchers have found support that this positive impact, that psychological safety has a positive impact on knowledge and information sharing at individual and group level, and which means that a positive psychological safe climate has the potential to foster knowledge exchange between people. Our hypothesis for this paper, we have 5 hypotheses. The one is the principal one, is that psychological safety in terms of trust, respect, tolerance, and suitable work environment has a positive effect on knowledge sharing in inter-organizational arrangements. Then we disentangle these hypotheses, and we have 4 hypotheses which contemplates the individual, each independent variable with a dependent variable. In all cases, the dependent variable is knowledge sharing. Here is our research model. Psychological safety has a positive impact on knowledge sharing. And then the disentangled hypothesis, each independent variable respect people, tolerance, trust, and suitable work environment with positive, they have a positive impact in knowledge sharing. That's it. Bárbara, I'm going to give you the word.
Thank you, Angel.
Thank you.
Okay, I will be presenting now the next sections. I'm sorry. So regarding the methodology, if you can move to the next slide, please. In this slide, we can see a summary of our method and methodology and model as well. The first part of our research design, in this part, we selected 2 different business units of a Mexican manufacturing group, where one of these business units was a supplier for the second. So relationships and exchange of information were assumed to be expected, you know, like as a good business case study. Then from formal, informal interviews, talks, meetings, company records, and daily observation, we're able to identify 27 key actors, which are the ones that we included as part of our sample. The unit of analysis in this study was the relationship between pairs of people. Yes, right. The matrices that we used were asymmetric, and one of them was considered as or was evaluated as an attribute, which is the context variable. So we had to do a process of converting them to, like you can see there in the slide. And once we finish this conversion and we have symmetric matrices, then we were able to measure. We were able to analyze data and test for a hypothesis using a quadratic assignment procedure, as you can see there in the last section of this slide. And then, as you can see in the following slide, we have, in the next slide, please, we have a table that summarizes the sources of that we used to build our survey. In this, we to define the proxies to measure psychological safety, we were based on the definition by Amy Amundsen, the seminal work that he did and how she defined psychological safety. And we also used a rostered format, of course, because we are using relational data. Our survey was composed of 3 sections. The first one, we were asking questions regarding knowledge sharing from the source that you can see from Borgatti and Kron, that you can see in the slide. In section B, then we asked questions regarding proxies for psychological safety using 4 components. One of them was respect for people, then tolerance, trust, and also a suitable working environment. And the last section of the survey was composed or to ask demographics about the samples. In our next slide, we can see a little bit more detail about our sample. I already mentioned that we had 27 key actors. 9 of these 27 were from one business unit and 18 were from the second business unit. As you can see there, they were from different levels and also responsibilities in both business units. The ages were, the average age was 45 years with a range between 25 and 63 years. So we had an intergenerational component there from our sample. And out of this sample, only 5 were women. What we found then from our analysis was that our correlations between the variables were all positive and significant and below 0.7. So we were good on that area. Then we started testing different models and we found that the one that provides the best R-square, which is the best indicator for model fit, was model 8 with a 43.2% explanation of the variance. So this was our best model. And as you can see there, all variables proved to be with statistical significance to prove the relationship that we were looking for. So if you can please go, thank you, Angel. So in our case, in this study, we found support for all of our hypotheses. In the case of the first hypothesis, we confirmed the relevance of respect as a pillar for human interaction, specifically with behaviors such as dedicating more effort, listening in a more attentive way, and avoiding negative behaviors. Then support for H1B means that tolerance is also key to shared knowledge, especially when it comes to being understanding and open-minded to others, other people's diverse insights. Similarly, support for H1C confirms and strengthens evidence on trust as a fundamental element for knowledge sharing. Particularly in this case, we found that behaviors related to individual performance and reliability play a determinant role for collaborators to share knowledge and ideas. And finally, H1D was also supported, meaning that a suitable working environment in terms of people feeling protection, harmony, and a friendly atmosphere was again fundamental for the process of knowledge sharing. So moving on, summarizing the results of our study. We have, of course, again, the 4 components that englobe our results. So regarding our theoretical contributions, overall, our research supports the premise that at an inter-organizational level, psychological safety is a very important pillar to instill and promote knowledge sharing in practice, to integrate knowledge, to be able to offer open spaces where people feel safe to share ideas, to look for feedback, to find new ways, different ways, disruptive ways of solving problems, etc. Then when it comes to the methodology contributions, it's important that we highlight the adoption of social network analysis or relational data to collect and analyze data at this same level as well. That led us to other future research, of course, ideas that I'm going to share with you in a few minutes. And then, in terms of practical contributions, our study provides clear guidance regarding the behaviors that organizations interested in growing and learning through psychological safety could develop, as well as individual practitioners that are looking into improving their management and leadership practice to motivate and promote more positive working conditions where knowledge can be easily shared. And finally, regarding the next steps, we consider that other studies could consider a more diversified sample, probably also studies that take place over a longer period of time, where we get to analyze other variables as well that have to do with different generations, which might in turn shift the perceptions and the understandings of what it means to share knowledge, what it means to have a psychological safe climate in our organization to be able to do that. And this takes me to the last point in our presentation, which is the evolution of psychological safety. Traditionally, in the very vast stream of research, it has been conceptualized as a psychological concept, perception, that I'm feeling that what I'm experiencing, I perceive this as being positive and safe for me to express. However, considering the results from this study, we are inclined to think that more than just a psychological perception, psychological safety could be more or evolved into a more relational concept, that this safety is, it's more than the perception, emerges from the interaction between people. So this will be the end of our presentation today. Thank you so much for listening.
So thank you very much, Doutora Bárbara and Dr. Angel. Again, another important research that clarified the understanding of how knowledge sharing in an inter-organization level can happen or be enhanced through the presence of psychological safety. Thus, respect, tolerance, trust, and an adequate environment to work are clearly relevant for knowledge sharing. Congratulations. And now I would like to invite Dr. Bareta, Dr. Paulo David Soasti Bareta, to conduct his presentation. Dr. Bareta is a product designer with a degree from the Pontifical Catholic University of Ecuador, Quito. He has a PhD in Science, Technology, and Society Studies from Tecnológico de Monterrey, Mexico, in July 2022. His research was focused on the relationship between knowledge-based development, value proposal, and material culture on product design, while studying how watch manufacturers at the city of Gleichhut has developed their products to become the main manufacturer in Germany. Dr. Bareta, it is with you.
Thank you very much. My presentation is about the use of artificial intelligence on product design. The main goal was to identify what kind of a specific knowledge enables a dynamic between humans and non-humans that might result on meaning-making propositions during the wristwatch process, design process. The value on these kind of explorations lies in identifying new ways for meaning-making processes, while identifying alternative approaches that enable us to produce some value propositions beyond technological disruptions. And well, this scenario gives way to the emergence of this valuation of value assigning into immateriality, and that might resume as some increasing in innovation knowledge. Okay, well, this is the big picture of the theoretical framework I was developing. And as you can see up here, we have a knowledge basement development, and which was very helpful was this model on knowledge events. And the main the relevance of the knowledge events model is that includes agents, contexts, and objects, and from that we obtain value. Therefore, value it's related it's a consequence of this the interaction of these three agents, these three variables. And it's very relevant that on knowledge basement development, the third generation of this field proposes the value creation under this model, which focuses on immateriality and meanings. This is related to the study of meanings and meaningful things, which is connected with semiotics. And when I started to dig deeper on how semiotics work, I realized some sort of parallelism between the knowledge event model and the semiotics Peircean model. So on the semiotics, we have the model, the meaning creation model, which relates to signs, objects, and interpretants. So these two were connected. Well, no, it was more like at this point it was a little bit speculative about this meaning making on one side. And on the other side, the value, even the knowledge events model. So the main questions on my research are located here on this column, as you can see, on how are the environments that influence the value proposition characterized. What are the roles of actants in this process, and how they materialize the ideas on design objects. What are the roles of artifacts on the signification process? And all these were analyzed under these approaches on semiotic analysis, material culture, interviews with the practitioners, a little bit of network analysis, and this was all the theoretical framework involved. Okay, so, oops, okay, there we go. The location was in the city of Glashütte in Germany, which is located very close to the city of Dresde, very near to the border with the Czech Republic. And this city has 175 years of watchmaking history. It's considered worldwide as some watchmaking pole outside the Swiss hegemonic and monopolic industry. And on this February, they obtained the origin certification for their brand. So this has been a very special year for them. And Glashütte, it's the home for 9 German brands: Union Glashütte, Glashütte Original, Nomos Glashütte, Mühle Glashütte, Tutima, Bruno Sonle, Moritz Grossmann, and A. Lange Sonne. And Wempe. Well, the history of this place, it's very relevant because it expresses how do we get there. And at some point, this city was living from a silver mine, and the mine, well, it just ended their operations. So this gentleman, Adolf Ferdinand Lange, established his first watchmaking company in Glashütte. He was followed by these other gentlemen, Moritz Grossmann, Julius Assmann, and Adolf Schneider. And with some effort and time, the city built its own reputation on quality for wristwatches. So we are moving fast forward to World War II. And in the last day of World War II, Glashütte was bombed by the Russian air forces. And what was not destroyed was taken by the Russians as war reparations. And then after the Allies set it up everything over there in Germany, Glashütte remained located at the German Democratic Republic. So they ended on the eastern side of Germany. Oops. Okay, so the German government, the GDR government, decreed the nationalization of every watchmaking company in Glashütte. This has a couple of consequences. On the bright side, they were able to develop their own technologies and materials, since they had this sort of block on economical block on as a consequence of the Cold War. And they were able to develop their own technologies, especially on materials. We can say that at this point, Glashütte wristwatches evolved from jewelry into precision utilitarian timekeeping devices. So the meaning of wristwatches changed a little bit from jewelry into utilitarian devices. And while this happened, we will see in the next slide what was their products. And then German reunification followed the Berlin Wall fall, and this allowed to many companies to go back to Glashütte and to start their own new ways. The first one was Alan Genzone, and it was followed by Nomos Glaciete, which were the company that I got in touch to study their products. We can see here what kind of watches they were making on the GDR time, and you can see here in this particular one, there's a explicit made in GDR, and these watches were following some sort of Swiss aesthetics. And as we're gonna see, this changed a little bit when Nomos Glaciete started their operations. Oops. Oh, there you go. This is the first, they call the first four. It's the first batch that the Nomos Glaciete launched to the market. The model Tangente, Ludwig, Orion, and Tetra. These were based on the design of a German designer, and there's a big documentary which was which was done by Deutsche Welle, where they state that this model Tangente has become a design icon in the German culture. So this was this watch started to create some sort of cultural movement around it. These are the newest models, Ahoy, and the next one, it's Autobahn. So my specific study, which I'm gonna show you here, focused on these watches from Nomos Glaciete and how identity can it was used as an innovation argument. So identity works as identity capital that drives innovation based on the material culture on this city of Glaciete. So for the exploratory phase, I studied 708 models from 8 German manufacturers from Glaciete. One of the manufacturers specifically requested that not to be considered on the study. The other eight manufacturers were very open to collaborate, so I respected their wishes. And these 708 models were analyzed using Orange 3, which is a software for image analysis. And this software performed metrics on 700 and 800 pictures of the watches, and it performed some sort of metrics that I'm gonna explain next. Okay, this is the interface on Orange 3. It uses widgets, so you can perform some visual programmation, so you don't have to deal with the code and stuff like that. it's very much on a democratizing technology phase. And this software has been created by the Ljubljana University in Slovenia. Let me explain you how this scheme works. First, we have the widget, the import the images widget, which loads the images into the software. Then we have image embedding, which generates vector values for the images, and it connects with an artificial intelligence entity called Inception V3, and it brings data from that entity. Then the widget distances gets makes measures between Euclidean distances on the images, and it performs calculations that are compared with this Inception V3 entity. Then the hierarchical clustering widget clusters all the images following some criteria. And on this case, I was looking for which images have a more similar material language. Their materiality were more looking alike. This was a consequence of design criteria, and so the software generated the clusters. And the last one, it's the image viewer, which renders all these calculations. And this is the end. This is the result of this visual programming workflow. And we have 3 clusters for these 708 watches. The first cluster, it's as I hope you can read it here, but most of them are watches from Nomos Glaciute, and this shows that the watches on the brand Nomos Glaciute, they are very different when looking alike, when you perceive them. And then we have the cluster 2, which are it's followed by Glaciute Original, Mule Glaciute, Tutima, and on this we can see that the proper interpretation of this is that they have some different brands mix their designs or they copy design in order to adapt their value proposal to market wishes. And the same happens with the cluster 3 on the lower part of the graphic. Then a secondary analysis was performed to build a predictive model between what type of watch and its image. Then using the same logic of a visual programmation workflow. Wait, here. Okay, so this is the second analysis that I performed. This is the visual workflow. You can see we have the importing images on the left side, then image embedding, which is again the same as we just watched before. And this convert all the images into vector information, and then we get test and score, which is a widget that requires a learner, such as logistic regression or tree classification, in order to process the data from the images. And in the end, we have this confusion matrix widget, which organize all the information from this vector scheme, which brings huge amount of matrices, and confusion matrix order them into the predicted way and the actual way. And then at the end, it's the image viewer, so we can render all this process. And this is the result of that analysis that I just showed you. On the vertical axis, we have the actual brands, and on the horizontal axis, we have the predicted brands. So, the main, the one I focused was Nomos glaciate, which is it's here, and on the diagonal here, we confusion matrix shows the right predictions, and on the outside, on the other fields, we have the non-accurate predictions. So Nomos glaciate reached 93%. 93.9% of accuracy, which was a very numerical way to represent how people perceive the coherence on design on this brand. And they only the software just here we have 168 analyzed models for Nomos glaciate. For Bruno Sonle, there was 232 watches. For Glaciute Original, there was 145. Moritz Grossman, they were participating with 18 models. Mule glaciate with 76 models. Nomos glaciate with 168 models and variations. Union glaciate with 63 models. Hanhart, it participated with 6 models. And Tutima, it didn't get any accurate predictions. So the worst performed was Tutima, and the best performed was Nomos glaciate. And this confirmed my initial perception on how Nomos glaciate was doing a job on design focused on identity as a differentiator for their products. And well, here we can see that this on Nomos glaciae had 9.2% predicted as a glaciae original and 1.1% as mule glaciae. These both measures, this 9.2% represents these models here. These are models from glaciae original that they are very much alike to some other brands, particularly with the Nomos glaciae. So the software predicted that these models were not from glaciae original, but from Nomos glaciae, which is a mistake, but it's a mistake that it's induced by the design characteristics that this brand has followed from the design leader, which established the trend. It can be said that. Okay, so let's go with the. Okay. Sorry. Okay. So the results of the exploratory phase can be summarized as this. This analysis statistically verified the idea of the design as an immaterial practice that reflects a formal identity associated with a brand. By identifying formal features on Nomos glaciae design that suggest a particular design style. This implies that this brand has an stylistic consistency across all their wristwatches. With the result of the second analysis, it was statistically proven that the design proposals reveal the use of certain formal patterns that create the identity of the wristwatches. In this way, brands such as Glaciae Original and Union Glaciae present patterns that can be associated to the paradigmatic forms of the Swiss watchmaking material culture. This is probably because these both brands were bought by the Swiss company Swatch. So they sort of reproduce the business organization that the Swiss culture has into these two German watch brands. And in the first data run, it was performed with 3 iterations. Orange 3 predicted 163 models as Nomos glaciae. It erroneously predicted 1 model as a glaciae original, and it predicted two wristwatches as part of the glaciae original brand. However, they were designed by Nomos glaciae, as I just showed you before. In the second run, it was performed with 10 iterations, and Orange 3 predicted 154 models as the brand on Nomos glaciae, and out of 168 possible wristwatches. The remaining 14 watches were wristwatches that had some feature common with other designs, with other brands, specifically with the Glaciute Original design. And this led me to the identification of what happened on these 14 wristwatches. And so I went to analyze specifically these 14 models, and then I realized that the software classified them in the right way, but the explanation of this was that the proportion of the visual elements on the dial of watches, of the wristwatches, in the case of this, one of these wristwatches was the Glaciute Original Senator Excellence Datum, which is a model released on 2016. And it follows many material characteristics from this Nomos Glaciute wristwatch called Zurich from 2009. So there was 7 years difference on the watches, and this led to the conclusion that Nomos Glaciute was the original brand, and Glaciute Original followed the trend. And this trend was characterized by the use of double-side polished steel hands on the wristwatch, the juncture of the lugs, which are the supports where what's the of the, it's well, let me show you. It's the lugs are this part of the wristwatch. Okay, so in the case of the lugs, Glaciute Original followed a very similar design to Nomos Glaciute. Since Nomos Glaciute were 7 years earlier to launch their design. Also, the use of visual patterns. There's this train tracks visual pattern that many wristwatches uses, and again, this was followed by Glaciute Original in 2010 on the original Ludwig model, which was launched on 1991. And the chromatic patterns on the dial, it also was some pattern followed by Glaciute Original in terms of the following the pattern established by Tangente Sport Pneumatic 42.
Excuse me, Dr. Soasti.
Yeah.
We are out of time, so if you can wrap up your presentation. Sure. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Well, there we did. That's my presentation exactly. Thank you very much for your attention, and that's it.
Thank you, Dr. Bareta. I think we don't have more time for questions, but so congratulations on orchestrating this entire arrangement. It mixes subjective aspects of KBD, innovation, AI in an industry, as traditional as the watchmaker one. Thank you, Dr. Bareta, again.
Thank you very much.
I would like to thank all the participants in this session and to invite you to attend the upcoming KCWS session with the panel Emerging and innovative knowledge-based ventures. Sorry for the questions that didn't answer, but our time is finished now. Bye-bye, and thank you for all.
Thank you very much.